right, this is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station and listen. It's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
It is Friday. You made it through another week. Congratulations. Friday, June 5th. We've got a lot going on, but I want to start really, really local. You may have seen the breaking news announcement that the Chicago Bears say that they are going to proceed with plans for a new stadium in Hammond, Indiana. That's the announcement from the Bears today. They're ready to proceed with a new stadium in Hammond, Indiana. This is a statement from the team. Yesterday, the Chicago Bears Board of Directors met and voted to advance our stadium development project in Hammond, Indiana, with the exact site to be selected. We believe a world-class stadium project in Hammond will transform the region, connecting Northwest Indiana to the south side of Chicago through the Loop and across neighborhoods and suburbs stretching north of the city. It will bring Chicagoland together and deliver new opportunities to its residents and businesses. Do you get those opportunities if you move to Indiana? Yeah, it's going to bring Chicagoland together to move to Hammond, Indiana. Do you get that? No, I don't get that either. At first I thought, well, maybe it's just another maneuver. Maybe it's just another effort to put more pressure on the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois, which, by the way, did not get the Bears thing passed. But apparently our legislators are taking this very, very seriously. House Speaker Chris Welch has already released a statement, and this is how it reads. Brief statement, but in April, the House passed an economic development package that was the product of extensive negotiation with the Bears and other stakeholders. That bipartisan legislation reflected our belief that we can incentivize statewide development and provide property tax relief for working people. While Indiana is willing to raise its taxes and promise $1 billion in taxpayer funds, Illinois has been focused on the needs of working families who want relief at the gas pump, at the store, and on their insurance bills, not a taxpayer-funded stadium. Illinois remains open to ongoing efforts to secure the Bears in Illinois. However, it will take time to get it right. Okay. Our good friend, George Bliss, has some insight into what is going on today and joins us now. George, thanks for being here.
Great to hear you. And I'll just say this straight out. I kind of saw this coming, and I'll tell you why.
Really?
Yeah, 15 years ago, I was blessed. I did a very personal project for Mrs. McCaskey. I built a Catholic radio station for her in Wisconsin. Lovely people. I had a long talk with George McCaskey. And Joan, even then, they were talking to people in Indiana. Now, let me connect the dots. They're very, very close to the folks at Notre Dame University. Father Jenkins, who's no longer there, and now Father Dowd. They have been in the ear of the McCaskies for 15 to 20 years saying, hey, Northwest Indiana would be good. Here's why. It's only 30 miles from Notre Dame's campus. They can use Notre Dame as their workout facility. They can use Notre Dame as their spring training facility. I'm not making this up. I heard this directly from the McCaskies, and they've always thought that they could move. Now, when they bought Arlington Heights, let's see, what year did they buy there? About 5 years ago. It looked like they were going to move there. Then all of a sudden they ran into the tax incentives. $52 million. Oh, Indiana's going to give it to us for free. Joan, in all the years you've been in television news, have you ever heard of a company turning down something for free? The answer
Okay,
is
George,
never.
but I have a question.
Never.
I know it was going to take time to develop the site at Arlington Heights, but what I read was they had enough land at Arlington Heights to do not only a stadium, but also kind of a whole entertainment center. And that when it was all up and running, the Bears stood to profit $1 billion a year or more once it was all built and working. I mean, how do you turn your back on that?
They could overcome the resistance from the state and the politicians. They didn't like it. They had 326 acres. They raised the taxes. They didn't want to do it. In came Hammond with this, let me say it clearly, free, F-R-E-E, free stadium. Joan, one more thing. Right down the street, the Gary Airport has a runway that is 8,900 feet long, 150 foot wide, a beautiful airport that's literally 6 minutes from the new field. Every NFL team in the world has their own private jet that's going to be landing at that airport and shuttling over in a course of minutes. Don't think that's not a factor. It is. South Shore train has 3 stops within 10 minutes of the stadium: Hammond South, Hammond North, and a place called Hedgewick. It is so unbelievably close to downtown. It's 19 miles. And last but not least, I ask everybody listening to look at your map and look up I-80, go all the way west, way out to Joliet, go all the way east to South Bend, go south on I-57. There is a ton of people moving to Northwest Indiana. They couldn't turn this down. It made business sense. It's over for Illinois. They're going to Hammond, Joan. This is my honest opinion.
Okay, George, one other question, though. I've talked to a couple of people about this, and they say that I know this statement from the Bears very carefully says that the location is to be determined, because I've had a number of people say that the site that they were offering the Bears is basically, you know, would have to be cleaned up. There's toxic soil, and apparently there's some sort of a business nearby that puts out really stinky smoke and stinky smells. And people were like, "Oh, the Bears will never go there. Nobody wants that." So, do you think that we should need to focus on they'll go to Indiana if they can find a site that isn't toxic and doesn't stink?
I don't think anybody's proven that the site is toxic. Let me refer to British Petroleum right down the street in Whiting, Indiana. I made a phone call to them. I haven't been sitting on my hands. They have found no environmental injustices at all. There's been no judgments in Northwest Indiana on what they call a slag layer. I think that the toxic thing is overblown. I'm not an environmentalist, okay? But they will overcome that. They will do it. It's done all the time. In New Jersey, it was done. In New York. After all, San Francisco's team is in Santa Clara. The Jets are in New Jersey. The Giants are in New Jersey. And, you know, why are people shocked about this, Joan? It's only 19 miles from downtown. It's a big, free boon for the Bears. They're going to go to Hammond. I just make my statement.
Well, Chris Welch, the statement he put out seems a little like, you know, okay, you want a lot of money, go to Indiana because we're taking care of our people here in Illinois. It didn't really say like, oh my gosh, please reconsider. There's more talking to be done. There's more common ground to be found. When will we know that this is absolutely positively a done deal? Because as you said, I mean, the Bears plunked down $200 million to buy the Arlington Heights site. As far as I know, they haven't put it back on the market.
It's good land. They could sell it. They'll get their money back. They're very intelligent people. So, listen, Chris Welch is a great speaker. I know that he's speaking for the people. Most people who are not sports fans could care less. The gas pump issue is on everybody's mind, the cost. A lot of people don't give a darn about the Bears, Joan. I'll just say it like it is. They overblow it that the whole world is going to die if the Bears move to Indiana. No, they are not. Everything's going to be fine. Life will go on, and the Bears will be playing in Indiana before you know it.
Okay, if all this comes to pass, and I've learned in the past not to doubt you, will they be the Hammond Bears?
Well, let's see. Indiana, let's see. Phoenix, the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, they'll name it state probably. Indiana Bears probably be the name of it. I'm not sure, but that's what they do. When major league teams of baseball or football or soccer move to an area, instead of the Phoenix baseball team, they did call the Arizona Diamondbacks. Of course it's going to be called Indiana something.
Wow.
Listen, don't discount the power of Notre Dame. Father Dowd. They might move the camp there, the camp for the kids when they go and watch and practice. It's going to happen. It's right down the street. The airport. Don't wipe out the airport. It's mint, beautiful condition, and no traffic. No traffic. You land the airplane there, you're there in 5 minutes. I mean, the other teams from the other NFL teams, the other 29 teams, they're probably going to love the fact that they can land in Gary, Indiana, and be there in 2 minutes. Then right after the game, they can leave. Logistically, you cannot beat this. You just can't. Cannot do it.
George, thank you for that insight and sharing your conversations with the McCaskies with us.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for giving us the background.
All right. Okay, thanks a lot, and listen to you every day. Don't miss you. See you later.
Thank you, George. George Bliss. Well, you heard it. And apparently some of our state legislators are taking it very seriously. We've got a lot to talk about that isn't Bears, Indiana Bears. We're going to take a break and be back with more after this.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
It is Friday. And that means we're going to keep the phone lines open until 3:30. We are going to talk with you about the news of the day and the news of the week. Okay, what else is going on? Well, we heard that Leslie Stahl, Bill Whitaker, and John Wertheim were meeting to try to figure out what they should do in the wake of the massive number of firings being taken over by Barry Weiss and Nick Bilton at 60 Minutes. I thought for sure they would come together and quit as one. They made an announcement today after a lot of thought. They're staying. They're staying at 60 Minutes. Oh, they're really upset. They're really upset by all the firings. Oh, boy, are they upset. And they don't want you or me to think that their staying is some kind of endorsement of Nick Bilton or Barry Weiss. But they really want to try to fight for 60 Minutes. And, oh, by the way, Barry promised them. Barry Weiss promised them that it was going to be different, that there was going to be all this stuff. This is how the statement ends. It's early days, but we are working to build trust with Nick, and we are heartened by Maria's promotion, somebody from the old team. We heard all the right things in yesterday's independence memo. It went a long way, and now we need to see these commitments to our process and procedures put into action. If we can continue doing the work that made this show what it is, committing acts of independent, fearless journalism and storytelling, we're here for it. If not, we leave. For now, we're staying. For our audience, the millions who watch us with a loyal but critical eye, we're staying for our teams and all the teams. We work for you guys. The thought of abandoning you became unbearable. And of course, we're staying because this is home. Here's to season 59. You know what the problem is with that? That is, you treated all these people so horribly and terribly, and you tried to change their stories, and you lied to them, and you lied about them, and you fired them. But you won't be like that to us. you won't be like that to us. You'll let us be independent, and you won't try to do to us what you have done to every single other person. How long do you think it'll take before we get the, oh my God, the leopard ate my face? I didn't think the leopard would eat my face because it seemed like such a nice leopard. I'm disappointed. I think if there was any chance to force CBS to restore 60 Minutes, it would have been with a complete and total abandonment by the loyal people. And they don't want it to seem like this is an endorsement, but it's exactly what it looks like. Exactly what it looks like. It looks like at least two of the three correspondents are desperate to stay relevant. Oh, we're both old. If we leave 60 Minutes, what will we do? Go home and count your money, maybe? I mean, I understand sometimes when it's really tough for somebody to make a decision based on ethics when it's going to really hurt you economically. You know, do I stand up for what I believe, or do I continue to get a paycheck and feed my kids? But Leslie Stahl and Bill Whitaker, unless they have been spending money like water, they're not in that position. They are not in that position. And I'm really, truly disappointed. Stay and fight. You know, you can kill me quickly, you can kill me slowly. But if they honestly think that they are going to be left, Leslie Stahl's already been screwed over by Barry Weiss. Leslie Stahl was trying to get an interview with Benjamin Netanyahu. Barry Weiss got the interview, and instead of giving it to Leslie, gave it to one of her favorites, who's not even on 60 Minutes. And that's also part of their plan. You know, 60 Minutes doesn't need to have like a regular staff. People can just, you know, you got a good story, oh, let's go to 60 Minutes. And you know what else they're talking about? All those stories doesn't need to be a 15, 20-minute story. We can put a lot more stories in if some of them are quicker and shorter. Yay. Leslie Stahl, Bill Whitaker, John Wertheim, the tiger or the leopard is going to eat your face. And when it does, and you complain like, oh, I have to leave, they're interfering, nobody's going to have the least bit of sympathy for you. They're going to say, why did you think? You've worked with bosses like this before, where they treat a bunch of people really badly, but for the short term, you're protected. And you start to think that you're always going to be protected until the next time it's convenient to get rid of some people. They are absolutely deluding themselves. Oh, and we're doing it for the show and the people. You're doing it for yourselves. I'm sorry. That's something I feel very strongly about. Okay, other news. The Guardian U.S. is reporting, you know, Bill Pulte, the unqualified Trump sycophant who has, in an interim basis, been put in charge of intelligence. Apparently, there's reporting that Trump has told him to start firing people. To start firing people at in the national intelligence bureaucracy. Apparently, Donald Trump told him, too many people working there. Too many people. The Wall Street Journal specifically asked Trump about these firings, and he said, well, you know, I wouldn't mind. The size of the office has been way too high for way too long. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. There are also reports that Trump said he didn't care if the department was closed down. Closed down. Unbelievable. So, those in the intelligence community, the bureaucracy that, you know, finds out what's going on around the world and makes sure the information is coordinated and shared with the administration. There's too many people there. Too many people. We got to get rid of some of those people. You know, maybe we should even close the whole department. Good God. The midterms can't come fast enough. Oh, and by the way, remember the judge's ruling that Trump has no business fooling around with the Kennedy Center and putting his name on it and everything else? It was leaked yesterday that the Kennedy Center lawyers have started sending out notes to everybody who works there to be ready to make a change. His name's going to be taken off the building. His name is going to be taken off of every email signature that has the dual names, every document, every official piece of stationery. It is all going to go back to the way it was before. Donald Trump is now saying, you know what? I don't have any interest in the Kennedy Center. He doesn't have any interest. He took it over, put his name on it, discovered that all the people who were going to perform there and had bought tickets there didn't want to come anymore. Then when it was looking bleak, he said, well, we're going to close it for 2 years for renovations. And people were really worried that he would pull an east wing and one day we would wake up and the whole thing would have been bulldozed. But now he's telling people that he doesn't care. He made himself the head of the Kennedy Center. That's how much he didn't care. He fired the board and installed his own. That's how much he didn't care. But, you know, he said there was too much wine being served there and not enough beer. But I guess he couldn't get people to come, or at least not the kind of people who could sell tickets. So at least there's that. A couple other things to talk about real quick. Whether you watched him on Ted Lasso or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Anthony Head, a British actor who brought real class to every job he ever did, he has died at the age of 72. His family, his daughters Emily and Daisy, put out a statement that said he passed away peacefully of complications due to pneumonia, surrounded by his family. 72, complications of pneumonia. Good grief. That is why we old people have to take care of ourselves, because something you might have been able to bounce back from in your 20s hits a little differently when you're older. Please tell me you're up to date on all of your flu shots and your COVID shots, because this could be us. At some point, it might be us. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with your texts and your calls right after this. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Find rebates and discounts on energy-efficient products at ComEd.com/home savings.
Want to join the conversation?
I just wanted to thank your station for consistently reporting the facts.
In a world of clickbait headlines, your station is who I trust for the real news.
Call Joan now at 773-763-9278 and join the conversation. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820.
773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. You can call me on that line. You can text me on that line. I got several texts about the idea of what now seems to be a pretty serious move by the Bears to relocate to Hammond, Indiana. Bob from Elgin texted in, no longer the Chicago Bears, they are the Indiana Bears. They are now a hot dog covered in ketchup. Nothing Chicago about them. Somebody else texted in, There are no luxury hotels for visitor, nor is there any nightlife in Indiana. Somebody else texted in, and I asked George about this because I've heard other people say that the site that Indiana is offering the Bears needs a lot of cleanup, and that there is a business in the area that puts out some really stinky smells. This caller addressed that regarding the Bears. The entire area where the Indiana site is proposed is a horrible brown field layered with 100 years of pipelines and sight lines and tank fields and flare stacks of British petroleum. It's a ticking time bomb. The city of Hammond is in a fiscal crisis. They have a hard time paying the fire department and police department staff as it is now. All of their city services are suffering. Well, you know what? Let's go to somebody who might possibly benefit from this. Bobby's on the line from Indiana. Hey, Bobby, what do you think of all this? The Bears might be coming your way.
Yeah, whoopee. Frankly, I could care less. And as I told, I'm pretty sure that's B working with you today.
Yeah.
If Indiana taxpayers are in any way footing this, like I told her, I can't even afford groceries and gasoline, so I don't I don't cotton to that at all. But the only thing that I will say for it, as far as that location, transportation is pretty well covered because you have the Gary Airport, which, as you know, is the staging airport for the Chicago Air Show. It's no little deal.
Yeah.
Right there, you have the Skyway Indiana Toll Road. They have an interchange right there, and other major arteries. And you have the entirely now rebuilt Chicago South Shore and South Bend, not only new cars, but new track, re-electrified, and virtually every station has been completely rebuilt. And you have, I think, in that area, at least 4 stops. So, I mean, as far as that goes, however, the caveat, as you just mentioned, that is all existing or old mill territory, oil refineries. I think somewhere in that area, but years ago, I was up there and was an old abandoned cement plant and everything else. It basically was the back in the 1920s. It was known as the Workshop of America.
Hey, Bobby, I got a text from somebody, and I want you to tell me if this is your experience. Somebody texted in, big mistake. Besides being hard to get to, the air is awful. I grew up on the state line near Whiting. Wait until the fans breathe in the oil refineries pollution and other factories. And this person says that there's been a lot of illness in the area. Is it stinky where they're offering the land to the Bears? I've heard multiple people say it's stinky.
Well, here again, if you want to get through the area, that's the nice thing about the transportation, though. You get through the area pretty zippy and quick. Like if you take the South Shore, skirting around Hammond. I used to live in a suburb of Hammond when I was a kid. It's called Hessville, which is between Gary and Hammond. And you have those big oil storage tanks, and you could see the smoke from Whiting where they refine the stuff. And oh yes, there are smells from the mills and from the refining. That's what I say. Transportation is great if after the game you want to get out of there quick because you might need to, depending how the wind is blowing. But that's the one thing I can say is, okay, you got transportation, but if it's some of the sites I can think of in the Hammond area, I can't see why you wouldn't need some kind of cleanup because of the decades and decades and, some of it well over a century now of, those type of mill activities and refining and all. So I don't know, but as far as, I would think Arlington Heights would be better aesthetically and health-wise.
Well, I knew that once the Bears actually bought the land and the deal went through, I think the area around there just thought to themselves, well, they're going to make money hand over fist. It's not fair to give them property tax relief. They should pay at least their fair share, if not a little more. And I think the Bears didn't like that.
Joan, it might be a situation like we are saying with Trump and politics and all of this crap. Follow the money.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
Hammond might be a festering hole because of what had been there. But if they figure they're gonna make their money there, maybe that's where they'll.
Yep, you're absolutely right, Bobby. Follow the money. Well, you know what? If this proceeds, you are going to be our Bears correspondent. So.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not a footballer. I'm not a big sports guy. I got enough trouble.
All right, Bobby. Thanks for the call. Always appreciate your insight into things here. Okay.
I wish I had some.
Yeah. Well, you have more than I do about Indiana, that's for sure. I want to share a few more texts that have come in about this. Somebody pointed out that if they're really going to do this, then they should take away the fees for the Skyway, since that's going to be the best way to get there. And, it's been a long time. I used to make that drive all the time because I would pass through Indiana on my way to southwestern Michigan. And, the Skyway, man, the fees have gone up and up and up. And, the Skyway was supposed to have fees until it paid for itself, if you're old enough to remember a million years ago. And yet somehow it has never paid for itself. And not only has it not paid for itself, but it has become more and more and more expensive to drive it. Interesting, huh? Wonder when it's going to pay for itself. Let's go back to the phone lines. We're going to Indiana again. Dan is on the line from Indiana. Hello, Dan.
Hi, Joan. How are you today?
Good. Are you thrilled with this news that the Bears might be or should be or could be coming your way?
Absolutely not. Until I hear it's official, I still say it's all a ploy. And I think Illinois called their bluff. Mm-hmm. And I really admire that, to tell you the truth, because until this is absolutely official, and I haven't heard that yet, I can't imagine that this is that they are going to do. To reflect on your last caller, the place is a cesspool. I've worked there. I worked there many years in my life. In the fall and in the winter with the fog and the weather, you can't breathe. It's so bad, because it holds it down. All of the pollution. It was actually at one time, I can't remember when, designated a toxic cleanup by the federal government, and this is exactly where they're talking about.
Yeah.
This is absolutely ridiculous.
I was saying a moment ago that I used to regularly drive through Indiana on my way to Michigan, and the kids and I used to joke because we could always tell, even without looking out the windows, when we were at Gary, Indiana, because of the smell.
Absolutely.
It had a very distinctive smell, and Gary is not that far away. Not that far away.
I know this will take years, if it does, if it's going to happen. This will take years to complete. I'm glad I won't be around to see it because I'm a lifelong Bears fan, and I'm not anymore. This is the end of it, and I live over here. But I'll also tell you about our illustrious governor, Governor Braun. is giving them $1 billion.
Yep.
$1 billion. While we already have nursing homes starting to close, we already have rural hospitals starting to close because of the big, beautiful bill. And wait till you see how that accelerates by the end of the year and the first of next year. But we have $1 billion to give the Chicago Bears. I mean, this is just unbelievable stuff. And then yesterday, Braun announced, I sent you a text on it actually, that he was extending the gas tax holiday, celebrating the cheap gas over here, and blaming it in the first place on Biden's policies. I heard the news clip. I heard it. They had it on local radio here. I mean, if this isn't unbelievable, all of this, I'd like to know what is. But, yeah, it's Biden's fault that the gas is as high as it is, so that's why he's doing it. It's 60, 70 cents, which, of course, is coming out of the pocket of Indiana on the gallon of gas, and he's extending it for another 60 days, blaming it on Biden. Yeah. It was truly a moment, I'll have to say. But as far as the Bears are concerned, I still don't believe it. Until I see it's absolutely for sure, I can't believe they're that stupid.
Well,
but then $1 billion is a lot of money. So
yep.
We'll
Dan,
see.
thank you so much for the call. I want to get back to a text that just came in. Somebody texted in, nobody is thinking. Thank you, Dan. Nobody's thinking about the Colts. You remember the Indianapolis Colts? And how a move to Indiana will mess up the market share for those two teams. I predict a precipitous loss of Illinois fans. Good luck with that move. Our good friend Greg from Lake in the Hills wants to weigh in on this Bears mess. Greg, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Right off the bat, I could care less about the Bears or football, for that matter, baseball, especially hockey. I detest all of these sports. I played basketball when I was young. I played baseball when I was young. I played some football, but it's gotten to a point where, this is all big business. It's the fans are in a different economic class than I've ever been. And, most of it's just the way, especially for the football games, for these big, what used to be, something you'd have in a picnic grove, these big cookouts with their big, huge SUVs and all the accoutrements that go along with it. I could care less. And it's another thing with the big business, externalizes all the costs and internalizes all the profits. And if it's because they can get away with it if, our state lets them. But the final thing I wanted to say is in our state right now, along with the collusion from Indiana and from Missouri, the two other states I know of, there's a big movement going on. WTTW, I believe it was, had a special on it. And they're talking about these people in the southern part of Illinois. They want to secede from the state. I know this has been talked for about 4 or 5 years at least, but I say, without what happens up here in Chicago in the 6-county area, at least the 6-county area these days, they wouldn't have the marketplace for the things they do down there. They should be very grateful that they have such a charmed lifestyle. Nothing's perfect, but I'll tell you, sometimes you look at what they have. They've got some real good things, and so do we. But we pay the price for it. They pay the price for their lifestyle too. So, anyway, that's the last thing I wanted to say. I'm going to get off right now because everybody else wants to have their say also.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joan.
Thanks for the call, Greg. We are going to take a break. I am going to try to catch up on the text line, which is, as you might understand, exploding. We'll be right back. 773-763-9278. Back after this.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Every weekday afternoon from 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT 820.
It is Friday. We spend the first half of the show every Friday up until 3:30, taking your calls and reading your texts. Let's go to the phone lines. Paul's on the line from Seattle. Hey, Paul.
Hi, Joan. Happy Friday.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Well, a little bit lighter. And it is, I share your disappointment about 60 Minutes. But you know what? It kind of goes to show you, I know what Leslie Stahl might be really all about. Maybe she's one of these go along to get along. And she always, she's done some interviews that, wasn't it with Sarah Palin where she just softballed every question, and it was just like, that was not good journalism. So I don't know about her. But on a lighter note, you know what I was thinking? Because of this thing about Donald Trump painting the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool blue, like it's some kind of swimming pool. And then he's talking about it, a skyscraper can fit in there. And so I started looking at, because I've been there once when I think I was 11. I think it was 1971.
That used to be a regular class trip around the time when you were like around 5th grade or 6th grade.
Yeah, right. It was right after 6th grade, summer of 6th grade, July after 6th grade. I was going into 7th grade. I'd be 12 in September. So yeah, I went. My mom took us there, and it was just July in DC, just hot and muggy. It was awful. But and I noticed it was really, really big because my mom said, well, let's go to the Washington Monument and we're going to drive over. And I said, my younger brother and I said, well, we'll just walk. And I was astonished that it seems like it's right there, and then it took like about 45 minutes to walk there. And it's even just getting on the lawn of the Washington Monument, it's like, well, we're here. No, not really. It's another 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about the reflecting pool, so stupid to paint it the bottom blue like a swimming pool. It's only 2.5 feet deep in the middle. You can't swim in it.
Yeah.
And
Donald Trump said it looked dirty, though. I don't like the way it looks. It looks dirty. So that's why we're going to bluify it. Is that a word, bluify?
Yeah,
it is now.
Yeah, well, of course, it won't reflect with a blue bottom. It has to be black. And so I was thinking, you can't swim in it. No diving. But I think the knock on him should be that he didn't dig it out, and there's no diving board. I think Congress should say, well, you did all that, and you should have put a diving board in at the near end. So if Mr. Lincoln wants to take a plunge every once in a while, it's so stupid.
Yes.
To do something like that to a national, or maybe he should have just paved it over with glass, like a mirror. So
I think that's reflective of what he's capable of. He's only capable of things like let's paint this blue. He's not capable of thinking, oh, if I bomb Iran, will they close the Strait of Hormuz? That's too complicated for him. He can't deal with that. But painting the floor of the reflecting pool blue, that's something he can wrap his head around.
And nobody said to him, well, sir, if you do that, it won't reflect. It will absorb light and reflect blue and absorb a lot of light and it won't reflect the monument like it's supposed to. It has to be a black bottom for it to actually be like the surface of the water, to appear like a mirror. And it's just like, I just don't think the guy, because nobody says anything to him. Nobody wants to, counter him and say, well, then maybe this is such a good idea. Yes, it's a perfect idea. It's a perfect idea. And so we have to put up with this crap. It's just, and I remember looking at that from the Lincoln Memorial and saying, wow, that is, when I was 11 years old, that was a pretty cool thing, going, wow, look at that. That's amazing. And now he's going to ruin it. And so it has to be fixed. And then he's ruining it. He's posting it as $1.4 million project that's costing $14 million.
Don't you think that's because like $12.5 million goes to him as a kickback or a finder's fee or something? Some of that money is ending up in Trump's pocket. There's no other explanation.
He's the project manager. That's what that's about. Everything he does, he gets a project manager's fee for these great ideas. So, that's why he wants to do a promenade behind the Lincoln Memorial, which is not needed, but everything with the Trump name on it. This guy is just, he's just besides being demented and in terrible health, both psychologically and physically, he is one of the he's more shallow than the reflected pool. I mean, he's a half an inch deep and 2,000 feet wide. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
so it's a match made in heaven.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I did see, the serious story that we saw on the other day is that Trump is, and I called my representatives in Congress to tell them that he's removing from the Washington State and Oregon coast, probably California coast, and also on the East Coast, up the East Coast, these ocean stream monitors that tell us what the understreams, undercurrents are in the ocean, which are hugely important for monitoring weather and particularly climate change. He's ordered that the National Center for Oceanic Atmospheric Science take them out. That oceanic science remove them. And it's like, they're these things that are about, they look like giant bowling balls. They're about,
and they're, I've seen a picture. Yeah, like big yellow buoys.
Yeah. And they measure they gather all this information and they're taking them out. And it's like, the concern over the Atlantic, I can't remember what they called it, that Gulf, the stream that comes from the Gulf of Mexico and goes up the East Coast, carries warm water up the East Coast, and then south of Greenland, it turns to the east and goes towards Europe, is what keeps Europe temperate. Otherwise, that warm water coming up and then turning and then going down the coast of Europe and England and down towards Africa is what keeps them warm. Kind of like the reason Seattle has a temperate climate is because of we're on the ocean and it keeps us temperate. But if this stream collapses, which scientists are warning that if the global warming is causing that in a very immediate way, it could plunge Europe into an ice age.
Oh, well, that's something to look forward to. Good grief.
I mean, this is we're looking at huge, and they did have a huge cold snap a couple of years ago that was devastating. They're not set to be that, so there are some cold parts, but it's not supposed to get as cold as it will if this ocean stream system collapses, like they're saying that Michael Mann, the professor from University of Pennsylvania, says
Paul, I wonder who is. I mean, I'm sorry, Donald Trump doesn't know anything about these buoys. He probably didn't even know that they existed. So I wonder who's advising him on this. I mean, we know Stephen Miller is giving him all the advice on how to be a racist, white Christian nationalist country. But who went to the Oval Office and said, oh, by the way, these buoys, man, you should get rid of them. That'll make you really popular. Get rid of the buoys. I don't know. That seems so stupid.
They probably didn't even tell him, this president, we need your signature on this. And, okay, he doesn't ask, what am I signing? This is part of the Project 2025 to destroy all information and data collecting on things that we need. I mean, they already did that to the weather, the weather satellites, weather balloons and stuff that they put up. And it's hurting farmers because they can't predict especially in the springtime, they can't predict whether they need to cover crops. And it's expensive to do that, to cover, your crops at night if it's going to go down to, frost. And if it's a waste of time, if they can't gather this information, because it's very local, especially here in Washington State, well, probably everywhere, within a couple of square mile radius, they need to know, do we need to cover tonight or not? And it's a very expensive thing to do. So if they don't need to do it, they don't want to have to.
Yeah.
But if they don't, they could lose everything, which has happened.
Paul, I'm coming up on the news. Thank you so much for the call. It's always great to talk with you. Quickly, I want to share a couple of texts that came in. Somebody texted in that they used to be in corporate America, and they made some decisions that were things that now they look back on that maybe they should have not made those decisions or reassessed them. At the time, they thought that, that this was an evil for the greater good, and that maybe that's what the thinking is among Bill Whitaker and Leslie Stahl and John Wertheimer. I don't know how they have justified this. I'm sure that's something like that is what they're telling themselves. But what I think is stunning, given that these are not stupid people, is that they seem to truly believe that the way every one of their colleagues has been treated is no indication of how they'll be treated. And that to me is, Scott Pelley, yeah, Sharon Alfonsi, yeah, the executive producer, the executive editor, a bunch of the producers, everybody who worked on Anderson Cooper's overtime broadcast, yeah, they've all been treated really badly. But inherent in that statement that they're staying is a belief that they will not be treated that way, and it goes against all logic. We're going to take a break for news. We'll be back with more after this.
You're the only voice of reason on the radio.
You give me hope.
Having listened to you every day.
Thank you for your clear insight.
Always felt a little bit smarter.
I listen to you every single day.
I keep coming back to this station, and thank you for what you do.
On WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's Progressive Talk from TuneIn.
Time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
It is Friday, and every Friday we read your text and take your calls until 3:30. So we can talk about the news of the week, though the breaking news about the Bears today seems to be on a lot of people's mind. The Bears making it sound like Hammond, Indiana is where they are going to go. Yep. To the point where a Speaker of the House, Chris Welch, put out a note that said, you know what? We've got to take care of people here in this state who are paying too much for groceries, who are paying too much for gas. Because the big thing in Illinois has been, you're going to make billions of dollars. We are not going to give you tax money to build your stadium. That doesn't make sense. So apparently Hammond has said, well, come here. We'll give you $1 billion. Do with it what you will. And there's been some disagreement about the site that Indiana is pushing, whether it is contaminated, whether the air around there is, how shall we say, stinky. Somebody texted in, the Archer Daniels corn plant is the only thing left that really smells. A lot has changed around there, in my opinion. Oh, so there's only one plant making nasty smells. Well, I'm sure the people won't mind that a bit. Carl texted in, the NFL has always wanted to expand internationally. Maybe the McCaskies should consider relocating to Ireland. Well, it's a thought. If Ireland wants to pay for it, I'm sure the McCaskies would consider it. Okay, let's go back to the phone lines. Ron is on the line from Chicago. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Okay. Now Trump can put his name on the Supreme Court building and be Trump and friends.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Especially if they're going to take, if they're going to take his name off the Kennedy Center, which by all apparent looks now they will, he could take those letters and put them on the Supreme Court building. I'm sure the justices would be fine with that, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, no problem at all. And with the Bears, the song, the old song is Bear Down, Chicago Bears. Would be Bear Down, Indiana Bears?
Well, I think it would have to be. I mean, if they're in Indiana, I don't think Mayor Johnson or the state legislature is going to want them to continue on as the Illinois Bears or the Chicago Bears. And yes, I know that New York teams are playing in New Jersey, but I don't think that's going to fly here. I really don't think that will fly. I think that there will be, if they think they're going to hang on to the name, there will be a legislation in the State House that tells them they can't have the name.
And yesterday, the Senate passed the budget for the ICE for the next couple of years, and the Republicans had a chance to finally do away with the slush fund, but they turned their back. So they did not want to make it part of the budget.
Yeah, well, at least for now. And that budget for ICE, I mean, ICE already has an incredibly large budget, and they have increased it. They have increased it phenomenally. My only hope is that I don't know exactly when a budget is passed how Congress can influence that, but after the midterms, when hopefully the Democrats take power in at least one house, maybe they can put up some roadblocks to some of this or slow it down because, spending is supposed to be approved by Congress. Now, once the budget's approved, I don't know if you can go back and alter it because I just don't know the legalities that much. But this would be a good time for them to figure it out.
Yeah, Congress should decide one way or another on the slush fund instead of, I'm afraid it's going to go through one way or another.
Yeah. Well, with Mike Johnson and John Thune, it very well might. Thank you, Ron. Thanks for the call. Somebody was texting in about, I told you I got a text earlier that said that, maybe Leslie Stahl, Bill Whitaker, and John Wertheimer were thinking that somehow, they could make a difference. And what I said was, I think it's really absurd and beneath them that they think that they are going to be treated differently than Nick Bilton and Barry Weiss have treated everyone else. It's, they were not going to do that to me. Scott Pelley, Sharon Alfonsi, Cecilia Vega, they've all said that management tried to mess with their story. Scott Pelley said they wanted him to add things to his story that were not true, that were not corroborated, and they wanted him to put some what he felt was bias into his reporting. Why on earth do Bill Whitaker, Leslie Stahl, and John Wertheimer think that something that's been done to everybody isn't going to be done to them? And somebody texted in, yes, you cannot trust that management team. It's weird how people rationalize things. The only explanation to me that makes sense for the three of them staying is that somebody higher up in CBS has told them, just hang on for a little while longer. We are laying the groundwork to get rid of Barry Weiss, because that has been reported now for several weeks, that there have been at the upper levels of CBS, that there have been meetings, and it has been discussed that maybe she should be moved to a different position. Maybe somebody else should be brought in, because apparently the higher ups at CBS readily acknowledge that she is damaging the CBS brand. There's one person I saw on social media who believes that that's exactly why she was brought in. She was brought in to make wholesale changes, and then when everybody was really mad about that, they could sacrifice her and she'd be a scapegoat. And they say, oh, yeah, you're right, these terrible changes. Well, we'll get rid of Barry. But will they get rid of the changes? That's the $64,000 question. Our good friend Dave from Hoffman Estates is on the line. Let's talk to Dave. How are you?
Hey, Joan. Thanks for the time. And that with the Bears, this can't be very good for Mayor Johnson or Governor Pritzker. With when they come around for election time again, and that, and
Well, you know, people might be mad that the Bears are gone, but I think people in Illinois would have been more angry to find that, you know, whilst we have trouble funding basic programs, that their tax dollars were going to the Bears, especially considering we still owe more than $400 million on the renovations we did on Soldier Field the last time the Bears pressured us.
And if this so-called deal does go through, how much does the big daddy, the NFL, get? They may be the ones that even say that, no, you cannot change the name to the, you know, that you got to keep Chicago or the C on side of the helmet. Because I believe the Bears are one of the originals. So, and the NFL, anyway, on that one. But did you watch the Chris Hayes' show yesterday with that interview with Graham Plattner?
No, I didn't see it. Tell me about it.
It was very good. Plattner, he didn't shy away from any of the questions, and there were some hardballs that he was throwing. He didn't break out in a sweaty brow or, you know, body just sweating all over. His eyes focused straight in at the camera. They weren't darting around. And he had said, you know, they talked about the infidelity and that. He said that he and his wife, you know, they worked that out and stuff like that. I guess she lost some trust with one of his campaign manager lady. That's the one that did the Linda Tripp on her, you know, and spilled the beans after she mentioned that. But and that dalliances he took, it's not up to you or me or anyone in the Chicagoland area that listen. Only the ones from Maine, as far as I'm concerned, and I'll take his word for it. You know, and besides, who in the hell are the Republicans to be judges of morality? Trump,
that's a
Trump
really,
was dating Melania.
Hot kettle black.
And then some. Mm-hmm. Trump was dating Melania while still married to Marla Maples, and then
and
when Melania
was dating Marla Maples while he was still married to Ivana, and then he was unfaithful to Marla Maples, and he's been unfaithful to Melania while she was pregnant, which is really, really a special thing to do.
Right, wasn't it when she was giving birth to Barron that he was with that Stormy Daniels or that and then Trump's choice, you know, this Ken Paxton. I mean, my God, you know, for the Texas senator, what does the good book say? He who without sin cast the first stone. My God, they'd have boulders tossed at them. But and then you're talking about that, you know, with that reflecting pond and at the colors and that. Well, what do you expect? This is the same one. Remember that first term when Melania had the red Christmas trees and everything was in red in the White House?
Melania was supposed to decorate the White House for Christmas, and she did this hallway. It was all in weird lighting and red trees. It was really spooky. And, you know, I know maybe she was trying to be artsy or something, but man, it was weird. It was weird.
Either that or it looked like a whorehouse or something with the red light.
Whoa, I never thought about that. I did not make that connection, young man.
Oh, okay. Anyway, let me get off. So I just, you know, I don't want to sit there and read a chapter of Bill Clinton's My Life. So let somebody else get on.
Dave, by the way, we got a text about that reflecting pool, and somebody said, why paint it, drain it, and put in a data center? There you go.
Well, that's our governor. He's got some things with the data center, too. You know, he's just going Anyway, let me get off. So I know there's been others I've been waiting.
Thank you, Dave. Right. Always a pleasure. We are going to get to those other calls, but first we are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Hey, Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Well, if the text line is any indication, the people who listen to this radio station are saying to the Bears, go ahead, move. We won't miss you. And we probably won't even drive over to Indiana to see your games. Somebody texted in, you know, we're not concerned about education, health care, fair wages, but a football team needs a new stadium. Stop everything. The Bear Brass, business leaders, and politicians involved can all jump in the CalSag channel. That's kind of typical about kind of the tenor of this. A lot of people texting in that they will literally be done with the Bears if they move to Indiana. I'm sure they will lose some support. How much is anybody's guess? Because, a lot of the tickets, at least for the really good seats, they are so sought after that they are passed down in the family. I have a friend who has great seats because her parents had great seats, and she got the seats from them. And that's not unusual. So will those people go to Indiana? There has been some talk, not today, but in the past, there has been talk about if the Bears go to Indiana, maybe Chicago petitions the National Football League for another franchise. Oh, what about that? And then once again, we could have Chicago Bears, just not the ones that moved to Indiana. Our good friend Jim's on the line from Chicago. Hello, Jim. How are you?
Hi, Joan. You got me thinking of Chicago sports history. The old White Sox fans were Cardinals fans, Chicago Cardinals fans, and I still prefer the Cardinals in Arizona. They're just as bad as the Bears. But think about the project on the west side with Wirtz and Reisendorf's sons, the two sons, put a $7 billion project together. It includes housing, jobs, thousands of jobs, and they weren't looking for the tax breaks that the McCaskies were looking for, apparently. Apparently, they worked it out with the city and have a marvelous $7 billion project that opens. It's called 1901. It's going to open up this week. But the reason I called it, Joan, is Trump is putting political appointees in every one of our disciplines, meaning science, health, so on and so forth. And the underlying thing under that says, this will be under my purview. In other words, he's omnipotent enough. There is no subject that he can't expound on. If it's medicine, if it's science, if it's oceanography, if it's climate change, if it's disease, if it's whatever it is, in that brain, that 80-year-old brain of his, he has all the answers. Now, this is preposterous, but yet he's putting it across because he really was influenced by this Project 2025 to believe that there was a deep state and that these scientists and doctors who work for 30 – and the truth is, Joan, when you're I don't care where you're working at. You come in there, you really don't know what you're doing. But through osmosis, through years of work, you start to catch on to what might go wrong or what might go right or whatever the case may be, because nobody is born with that knowledge. The point is we're throwing them out willy-nilly, and we're going to let this nut who says, I will weigh in on all these decisions on medicine, on science, on every. I mean, can you imagine anybody on this earth voting for somebody like that? I don't care who it was. Take Roosevelt. He was a very successful politician. But, Joan, he was surrounded with the brain trust, the best brain trust he gave his
Well, that's the key. It's such a huge job. You have to know how to surround yourself with experts.
Absolutely. He had two social workers, two magnificent social workers, Harry Hopkins, who he put in charge of doling out the money during the Depression, and Francis Perkins, who came up with Social Security. These were two social workers. Now, do you think a social worker, you get involved with this Project 2025 and these billionaires? I don't think so, Joe. I don't think they even, but they had their ears to the ground. You understand what I mean, Joan?
Yep.
But this is ridiculous. But as far as I'm concerned, the Bears could have worked out any kind of deal they want to do. They were loaded with dough. So, I mean, I don't I'd say bon voyage. We'll get another team. If the Reisendorf, if they want to get a new stadium for the Sox, he owns about 20% of the Sox. So I imagine he's got Hunt, and he's got a bunch of billionaire investors behind him. They'll get a team for Chicago. I guarantee it. Because the NFL is trying to go all over. They're trying to get a team in Singapore as we talk now. So Chicago will get another team. Well, I mean, Chicago will get another team. There's no question about. And Joan, you have a great weekend, and thanks for taking my call, Joe.
You know,
Thank
if there's a football team in Singapore, I think it should be the Singapore Slings, like that drink. I don't know what goes in a Singapore Sling, but I know it's a drink.
I could use a few of them anyway. Joan.
Well, you know, it's the weekend. You know, it's my weekend doesn't start for another hour and a half, but I give you permission, Jim, to start your weekend right now.
Sounds good, Joan. And you have a great weekend. And thank you, Joan. Thank you much.
Thank you. More comments about the Bears. It's a sports team, not a program keeping people alive or improving human life. Let them leave, which is kind of a lot of what I'm hearing. And as for the decision by Bill Whitaker, Leslie Stahl, and John Wertheimer to stay at 60 Minutes, somebody texted in, Leslie Stahl is getting a new contract. I would insist on a non-interference clause. Her contract has expired. She goes year to year, and the one she was working under did expire, but obviously she felt and was treated to the fact that she would be welcome to stay because just recently she was shooting a story overseas. In summer, they show a lot of reruns, but that's because they spend a lot of time writing and editing the stories that are going to start to premiere in September. And actually, with so many people gone, there is some concern that there might not be enough stories. And the other concern is when they repeat stories during the summer, they always update them. If it's just a feel-good story, maybe there's nothing to update. But for a lot of the stories, because they were shot maybe a year ago, there is an update to the story done by the correspondent. So if we see any Cecilia or Sharon or Scott stories, I guess they won't get updated if we even see them at all. And by the way, if Leslie Stahl does get a non-interference clause in her new contract, she should make sure her agent writes in that there is a huge financial penalty if they violate it. And then you'd also have to lay out the grounds for how do we define interference? What does that look like? You have to think it all the way through. I think that's a great idea, but it needs to be clear what interference is, and it needs to be clear what the penalty is for interfering. Okay, well, by the way, real quick before I go to break, I always get a number of texts that say, why aren't you covering this story or that story? Every day, every single day, there are more stories that are important than I can get to. And rather than give every story, get them all in and only give them 30 seconds, I would rather pick a number of stories and spend more time on them. I do try to work stories in. Sometimes I'll bring a story up during an interview later in the afternoon. But it's an editorial thing. You can't get everything in every day. You can't get everything in any day. You have to decide what you are going to let go. Okay, we are going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to talk to Bruce Rheins out in California. They've had some voting going on there. We'll talk about that right after this. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Visit ComEd.com/facility assessment to learn more about energy savings.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Bruce Rheins lives and votes in Los Angeles, California. He retired from being the deputy bureau chief for the beleaguered, now beleaguered, not then beleaguered, CBS News Bureau in Los Angeles, or as Bruce likes to call it, CBS Classic. I asked him to join us today to talk about some of the races. Bruce, first of all, hello, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Joan?
I am doing pretty well, I got to tell you, all things considered. And how bad can you be on a Friday? I mean, seriously?
It's a beautiful day out here today. I don't know what it's like out in Chicago, but it's fantastic in LA today.
Well, it was raining last time I looked. It's supposed to rain all week, but, we need that rain. Hey, I have a question for you. Before we get into any of the specific races, why does it take so long to count the votes in California?
This is, here in California, we are very used to this. It's, people around the country start screaming and yelling. Here's what happens is we are primarily a mail-in vote system. You can go to a polling place on election day or an early election center to cast a vote on a screen. When you cast the vote on the screen, you're already verified by the poll worker who's there. And when you vote, there are no errors can come up. You can't vote for two people in the same race, for instance, so things like that. And then it just gets instantly scanned, and those votes get instantly scanned. And as you know, the Republicans are more likely to vote that way than the other way. But it's only about 10% of the voting in California happens on a screen on voting day or early voting in an election center. Most people either mail in or they drop off their ballots at a voting collection box. Those votes then have to be signature verified, which takes a long time. And they have to be checked for any errors, any odd markings on the ballot, or if somebody voted for two candidates or something like that. If the election worker who's in charge of looking at that ballot can't make a decision about what the voter meant, it then goes to a two-person jury who adjudicates what the voter meant with whatever mark they were making. So this takes a long time. And then we have a thing called curing, where votes that are rejected because they can't verify the signature or whatever, people have 22 days to come in and verify their identity and their eligibility to vote. That's by law, and it takes some time. There's still about 3.8 million votes in California still to be calculated. So it's going to be a while.
Well, how long does it usually take? What do you mean by a while? A few more days?
3 weeks.
Oh, my God, you're kidding me.
No, and that always happens. People forget that happened in 2024, that happened in 2022, that happened in 2020. It always takes about 3 weeks for California votes to be completely certified.
Wow. Because I wondered, because I was looking through the results earlier today, and I looked at the governor race, and it said, well, it looks like it's Steve Hilton and Xavier Becerra, but Tom Steyer still has a shot. And I'm like, excuse me, Tom Steyer still has a shot? How could that possibly be? You've just now explained it to me.
I'm looking at the most recent update I see, and I see Hilton's got about 1.5 million votes. Steyer has about 1.1 million votes. He's about 400,000 votes behind. But like I say, there's 3.8 million votes still to be calculated. And the majority of those are coming in late from highly Democratic areas, because out here in California, a lot of Democrats held on to their ballots until the very last minute, me included, because we were trying to make a decision because none of the candidates really electrified the crowd. So people were just holding it on and waiting to see what would happen. So, but Steyer only 400,000 votes back out of coming up an estimated 3.8 million votes still to come. He's got a very good chance.
Okay, you held back because you really wanted to learn as much as you could. Do you use any kind of voting guide? The reason I ask is because, my daughter lives in Burbank, and I was talking to her about how she was going to vote. Foolishly, I was like, who are you going to vote for Los Angeles mayor? And she goes, Mom, I live in Burbank. I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. But when it came to the governor's race, she said that there was some L.A. voting guide, and I don't know if it was put out by the L.A. Times, that went through all the candidates, and they recommended Tom Steyer. And apparently she read me the paragraph. I was like, that can't be right. Read me the paragraph. And she said, she read the paragraph, and it was like, yeah, we know he's a billionaire, and nobody likes billionaires, but he's got some great ideas. and he was their pick. Do you use a voting guide, and if so, how many? And how do you figure out which one to give the most weight to?
There's a lot of different voting guides, and I was looking at a lot of different sources. There are a lot of different independent election websites and things like that. There's something called LAist, and there's other ones as well. The LA Times is a good one. Tom Steyer, in terms of Los Angeles, is he's a progressive who has very good ideas on environmental things, and Jane Fonda was among those who endorsed him. He is the most progressive of the candidates. At least he's talking a good progressive game. Xavier Becerra is kind of not much more moderate than that, and doesn't have the environmental record that Steyer has. Steyer has put his money behind a lot of environmental issues. I know that he had been involved. His hedge fund was involved in fossil fuels and things like that in the past. But he is not. He's walked the walk, and I have to say he's put his money where his mouth is on environmental issues, and that's something that is very important to a lot of people, especially in Southern California.
That's so interesting. My first introduction to Tom Steyer was one of these last presidential races where all of a sudden I'm seeing these ads. Hey, I'm Tom Steyer, and let me tell you, what I think the president. And I'm like, who the heck is this guy? And it seemed to me the running for president was almost like a vanity project. And I've seen this, you've seen this in Chicago. Somebody is either a really successful CEO or a rich person, and they think, oh, look, I'm so great. I have all this money, or I have all this power. I should be in elected office. Yeah. And that's how the Steyer presidential race struck me, as a rich guy who had too much money and too much time on his hands, and thinks that somehow because he's rich, that means that he's smarter than the rest of us. Obviously, that was perhaps a little harsh, would you say?
We've gone through that before here in California. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he had no political experience. He had a lot of political ideas and influence that way. But he was a billionaire, or multi centimillionaire, and he became the governor. And you know what? He was not perfect. He was not the perfect governor, but he was not as bad as a lot of people thought he was going to turn out to be. Steyer, I'm afraid with Steyer, it may turn out that if he were to be elected governor, that we would kind of get Fetterman by him, and a lot of things change. But as of now, he's talked a good game, and that's why he's still in the running. And let me just say that here in California, most of the red counties their votes are pretty much all the way in. It's the blue counties, the deep blue counties, that still have a lot of votes out. And while I think probably Becerra is going to end up being the top vote getter when this is all said and done, I think there's a very good possibility it could be Steyer in the second position.
Wow. So basically, right now, Steve Hilton, the Republican who is running for governor, has more votes than anybody else. But you think that he's not going to pick up many more as more votes are counted?
Right now, when I'm looking at the latest numbers, Hilton is ahead of Becerra by only about 50,000 or 60,000 votes. And, almost 4 million votes are still out there waiting to be counted.
I know Becerra has had positions in Washington. Tell me about his background in California. Has he been part of the State House? Has he been Attorney General? I know very little about him.
He was a congressman for many years, and he, was a rank and file guy. He did help write. He contributed to the writing of the Affordable Care Act, and that is why maybe Biden ended up selecting him to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. He was Attorney General. He was appointed Attorney General after Kamala Harris left that position to become a senator. So he was an Attorney General for several years here, filed some suits against 120 suits against Trump. I think only maybe 20 of them have been adjudicated so far. And then he was selected by Joe Biden to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He apparently, if you read, some online stuff, inside stuff of politics, not particularly well liked in the Biden administration, and not particularly effective. Although he would argue that he was effective, especially when he was handed the COVID mess. But his background was not in health or health-related issues. His background is law and politics. So that's where he is. And he was not very well known. He was, we had Eric Swalwell was a runaway leader in the race before his collapse, and then Becerra just came up all of a sudden from that. He was well back in the pack behind several other people, behind Tom Steyer and behind Katie Porter, and but then he kind of shot to the top.
And I take it that, unlike Illinois, the governor doesn't pick the lieutenant governor. They don't even have to be the same party.
Yeah, that's stupid, isn't it? We
I didn't say that. That was Bruce that said that, not me.
It is. That's a stupid thing. That it should be. They should be yoked together more than it is, and it's just an afterthought. And lieutenant governor really doesn't do anything. They are nominally in charge of the state whenever the governor is out of the state, but that's about it. I don't know. We saw advertisements from all the candidates saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I believe in this, I believe in that. There's not much really that they can do.
A lot of people think that our former Lieutenant Governor, Juliana Stratton, won the Democratic nomination for Senate basically because she didn't have a real track record. She had been a House representative for less than one term, and the governor picked her to be lieutenant governor. And as in Illinois, as in California, the lieutenant governor really doesn't do a whole lot. And there were people who said, well, with Raja Krishnamurthy or Robin Kelly, you can look at how they voted. You can pretty much get a sense of who they are. But it was like Juliana Stratton could sort of create herself out of whole cloth. And there was no way to check it. I thought that was an interesting observation.
Yeah, and that's the same thing. We got that going on in the race, not only with Tom Steyer for governor here, but Steve Hilton. What has Steve Hilton done? He's been the advisor to David Cameron, who was kind of a failed prime minister in England, and he mouths off on Fox News a lot until he entered this race. He says a lot of things, and interestingly, he says he's going to make this change and that change and all that stuff, notwithstanding that California has a supermajority of Democrats in the state legislature, in both houses of the state legislature, and nothing is going to get done if there's a Republican governor with the amount of state legislators who are Democrats in here.
I'm speaking to Bruce Rheins, former deputy bureau chief for CBS News based in Los Angeles. We are going to continue this discussion right after a break.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Bruce Rheins is here. He's the former deputy bureau chief for CBS Network News in Los Angeles. We are talking about the California primary vote. I couldn't believe that Spencer Pratt has come in second, at least so far, in the primary for Los Angeles mayor. Spencer Pratt makes Donald Trump look like a statesman. What the heck? What the heck, Bruce Rheins?
A lot of people were upset at Karen Bass. Karen Bass has done a kind of a low-profile job. It hasn't been very flashy at her thing. And there's a lot of people who are very upset that she was out of the country when the fires happened. And she said that she didn't know that it was going to be the wind event, the Santa Ana event was going to be this bad, which is kind of disingenuous. We knew for a week beforehand that this thing was this Santa Ana was going to come, which ended up fueling the Palisades fire and the Altadena fire. And then Pratt has jumped on that and has capitalized on that. Also, I looking on social media, I got to get off of those threads and those other things. There's a lot of people saying, I'm out of state. I don't live in the state, but I'm going to go to California and I'm going to vote for Spencer Pratt because they don't check whether or not you're eligible to vote. In the previous segment that you and I just had, I think I've showed how that's discounted. People can't vote. It's voter fraud, and they would be found out very quickly. But there is a perception that Pratt, is the opposition to Karen Bass, that we don't want Karen Bass, and but this guy is a joke. He's nothing. I mean, he says that he's going to do this and that, but then there's no specifics about what he's going to do. And also, let me just say, I'm looking at the latest numbers here right now. He's behind Karen Bass by about 30,000 votes, but there's still more than 300,000 votes left to be counted. And those are going to be in more Democratic areas. There's always a Republican always gets about 30 to 35% of the vote here in California, in Los Angeles and throughout California. It's just the way it is. There's never been a Democrat on Democrat runoff for mayor of Los Angeles or for governor. So this is it's not unusual to have a Republican, or a phony Republican, a rhino or whatever, coming in the second place. But at the end of the day, if it's him and Karen Bass, this is Los Angeles. Karen Bass is going to win. But Nithya Raman has a good chance. She's only about 30,000 votes behind Pratt, with 300,000 votes yet to count. It's anybody's game.
I know Karen Bass. I have followed her. I know Spencer Pratt, much to my dismay. I don't know a lot about Nithya Raman, except that she has a great last name. What can you tell me?
Nithya Raman she's a Los Angeles City Council person. She was a great ally. She was elected in 2022, I think, or 20 or 2022. I can't remember. She was a great supporter and ally of Karen Bass. She got in she announced her candidacy on the very last day of eligibility. And a lot of people think, I don't know, this is speculation, that she looked at Zoran Mamdani and said, if he can do it, I can do it. She is also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. And I think that she was just kind of talked into, people are kind of mad at Karen Bass because of the fires, and maybe I've got a shot. And Mamdani was I'll just follow the Mamdani playbook. But, she's not going to be the top vote getter. It's possible that she could overcome Spencer Pratt.
So let's see. This is June 5th. So you think by June 26th, you'll have some winners and losers?
Certified winner and loser. I mean, we might know before then if somebody is really, running away with it and getting a lot of vote, then unofficially we might know. But remember, right now in California, it's 7 days after the election day for the ballots to be valid, as long as they're postmarked by election day. So, we have a very slow mail system, especially in the rural areas and the unincorporated areas. So ballots are still coming in and valid to be counted until next Tuesday. And then after that, there's millions of people. And, we have the same problems here in California that many other states have. That's underfunded. There's not enough poll workers. There's not enough election officials. It's just a slow process. But the thinking is, we want to verify it in California to get it right the first time, so it cannot be held up and accused of fraud. I know that the U.S. attorney here now in Southern California has announced some sort of investigation into election fraud. He just announced it yesterday, but with no specifics. And he's a Republican who was appointed by Trump. So we'll see what happens on that. But there's very, very little voter fraud. I think we've had like something like less than 10 incidents of voter fraud here in California in the last election. It was something that was like a handful.
I am desperately trying to remember where I read this morning. You know, I wake up in the morning and I read and read and read, and I'll think like, oh, I have to ask Bruce about that. Where did it come from? Where did it come from? I can't remember. But somebody was writing about the fact that Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, behind the scenes, it's really shaping up to be, you know, a really passionate fight. You know, are they both going to be on the ballot for 2028? Do you have any sense that behind the scenes there is turmoil or there is vitriol between Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom?
I don't think there's vitriol. I mean, there is definitely a sense of trying to stay away from each other's lane. We were told, and it was very famously in the mid 2010s or whatever it was, that they made a deal that Gavin Newsom was not interested in running for Senate and or being appointed to the Senate, actually, and then where Kamala was, and she was not interested in being governor, and so they kept their separate lanes. Now with 2028 coming up, I mean, it's, you know, virtually a lock that Gavin Newsom is going to run, and the question is Kamala going to run? And if Kamala does run against Gavin Newsom, you know, that'll create a rift here, certainly in California as well as in other places. But I don't get the sense that I know Kamala's keeping her options open, but I don't get the sense that she's like really gearing up for something as much as I've seen Gavin Newsom gearing up for something.
Yeah, and I talked to a Democratic lawyer who advises a lot of candidates, and I said, you know, what determines when somebody gets in and when somebody gets out? And he said, you know, I started listing all these conditions. He was like, no, it's money. If they have enough money to run, they'll run. When the money runs out and they realize there isn't more money coming, that's when they decide they're going to spend more time with their family and drop out. So I guess it'll depend on how the money goes. Bruce, I can't let you go without getting your take on a man I know you respect and have worked with, Scott Pelley.
You know, Pelley, anybody who knows Scott Pelley knows his rock-ribbed loyalty and devotion to the ideals of journalism. And I just want to say that it's part of the DNA of 60 Minutes that there is always been conflict and things like that. Don Hewitt, the man who originated, the producer who originated 60 Minutes, encouraged correspondents and producers to fight with each other and to fight with him about the future of the show to make it as good as possible. He and Mike Wallace had very, very famous fights. So, you know, this is not something that is like some extraordinary thing. And I think Pelley was right in kind of challenging this guy to explain, why should we follow you when, you know, instead of just sitting there and listening to a bunch of platitudes.
And the announcement today that after much consideration, Leslie Stahl, Bill Whitaker, and John Wertheim say that they're going to stay. Before I get your opinion, because I've been giving my thoughts on this all day so far, I think it's foolish. I think it is a surprising lack in judgment for the three of them to think that, okay, Tanya Simon was treated badly, and the executive editor was treated badly, and a lot of the producers were treated badly, and some of the correspondents were fired, and Scott Pelley says he was treated badly. But that's not going to happen to us. That's not going to happen to us. It's going to be different.
You know, to one extent, you're right, but I think that they are going to try to just exercise as much independence as possible, knowing that there's scrutiny now on the 60 Minutes editorial deliberations, and if something untoward happens again, it's going to get out, and you know, and then the chips will fall where they may. You know, 60 Minutes has gone through many of these types of controversies before. You know, the famous thing with Jeffrey Wigand, the whistleblower in the tobacco industry, who the story that Mike Wallace did with him was sat on for more than a year because of the fear of what is going to happen if they piss off the tobacco industry. And they made a movie about it, The Insider. Famous Memogate with Dan Rather, whether or not these memos that were written to excuse George W. Bush from his military service, whether those were legal or not, and it resulted in Dan Rather's firing. But 60 Minutes as an institution has taken the blows and has come through it. So I would hope that Leslie and Bill and John know what they're doing. You know, I'm sure they're thinking. There's probably going to be some more correspondence picked from CBS that kind of flesh things out, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I know we have to break for news, Lady B, but my only hope, because I've been reading a lot about this, and there have been multiple reports that in the highest levels of the company that people have said, you know, that maybe Barry Weiss should be maybe moved to a different position, and some other people brought in to lead CBS News. I keep hearing that these are the rumors. I don't know. Do you think I think it's possible that maybe these guys, because they apparently met with Bilton at least, maybe these guys were given a signal from higher up, hang in there, we are going to make some changes, just stay for now. I don't know, I hope.
I hope so too. There's rumors that she might be moved to a different position. I mean, it's certainly if this merger goes through with Warner and CNN comes under Paramount's purview, it's you know, who knows what's going to happen. I just know that, you know, she has no experience as a journalist, and I don't know what an editor-in-chief does at a broadcast television news operation, but, you know, we'll see how that shakes out.
Bruce Rheins, thank you so much for being here and giving us your insight. Maybe we'll have you back when we've got some results in California and we can talk about that.
Keep tuned, 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, all right. We are going to take a break for news. We'll be back with much more after this.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
Quite frankly, I get most of my news from you.
Joan Esposito.
Y'all ready for this?
On WCPT 820.
I would like to welcome to our program Jack Corrali, who's the Director of Government Relations at the Planetary Society, which is the world's largest space advocacy organization. Jack, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Joan. Great to be on the show with you.
And in the interest of full disclosure, Bill Nye has been on social media saying, like, you know, make a donation and get a chance to visit us. And I think I did. I think I did make a donation because, you know, anything to do with space or our planet is right up my alley. Well, first of all, let's back up. Talk about the Planetary Society, what it does, why it was invented, why it was created.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, thank you for being a supporter of the organization.
I didn't win.
Well, we maybe next year, right? There's always next time. Well, we're incredibly grateful for the outpouring of support that we've seen from you and from so many others. The Planetary Society is a very unique organization in the space community, which is predominantly represented by the civil space agencies, NASA. NSF does a lot of space research. You have commercial space companies, your SpaceX and Blue Origins of the world who do great work. But we are the public's advocate for the space program. We don't take any company money. We don't take money from governments. We're entirely individual funded, and so it really kind of gives us a unique vantage point. And the organization was founded with that vision of being the public's advocate for space and for space science. by Carl Sagan, who was one of our three founders, Bruce Murray and Lou Friedman being the other two. And really, we were founded in 1980 at a time when government support was waning. The Reagan administration proposed a near total evisceration of the space science program at NASA. And we were founded to be the counterweight to that, to be the advocates for the public's investment in space. We've done amazing things with the space program, all because of the tax dollars that we spend, the 0.34% of our tax dollars that go towards NASA. We get so much out of it, economic prosperity, the technological capabilities, and just the wow factor, right? You see these images from the surface of Mars, from the James Webb Space Telescope. That's all made possible because of our public investment and for a science-focused approach to space exploration, which we are championed now for 45 years.
I remember that when the Artemis crew landed and, they were invited to the White House, Donald Trump is congratulating him, but they didn't look very happy because apparently about the same time as they landed and were invited to the White House, he let it be known that he thought, that we could probably cut NASA's budget by about half. Kind of like, oh, it's great. What you did is great. We got to do more of that, but do more with less. It seems like we're back in a time worse than Reagan.
Yeah, I mean, this is an existential threat to U.S. leadership in space, and we see it both in the budget numbers that have come out of the Office of Management and Budget, led by Director Russ Vought, who has for many years, even before preceding being the OMB director back in 2022, wrote a manifesto proposing evisceration of the space science program. NASA is the only one sending missions to Mars, the only one operating spacecraft around every planet in the solar system. We visited every major world in the solar system. I say world because we got to include Pluto, right? This is the public's space program, and you have that. And then just last week, OMB has proposed this demonstrable overhaul of federal grant making programs. It would basically be a surrender of U.S. leadership in the sciences for generations to come. And so between the budget numbers and the policy changes coming out of OMB, they certainly do not have our best interests at heart.
So how do I hold two ideas that seem to be very different? The one, NASA wants to build a base on the moon. Even Elon still hasn't given up the idea of going to Mars. And then reading about the money to do that and how there are cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts. To me, that's a little cognitive dissonance.
There is. It does feel like that a lot of the time. Now, I put a lot of faith when it comes to U.S. space policy decisions in a little Article 1 branch of government called the U.S. Congress. Not the most productive Congress in American history, but what they have been able to do, despite all odds, it seems, has been restoring NASA's budget. So for the current year that we're operating under, fiscal year 2026, NASA's budget has remained flat with last year, and actually has remained flat for the past 2 years, in large part because despite cuts being proposed by the OMB, the Congress has said, no, this is an important thing, and have done so in an overwhelmingly bipartisan way. 397 members of the House, 82 members of the Senate. I don't know of any other issue, maybe a handful of others that have that level of just bipartisan, almost nonpartisan support. The value of doing space is very important. And I joke, you got 535 members of Congress, you got at least 535 reasons to explore the cosmos. It's because, whether it's jobs in districts, which NASA touches all 50 states.
Really?
And 75% of, yes, all 50 states, 75% of congressional districts see some level of funding from NASA science in particular. It's even more when you look at the human spaceflight, the technology development, aeronautics. You're touching every corner of the country. Little mom and pop shops that are building the best widget for a given space mission, it's a 3-to-1 economic return on investments. For every dollar that we put into the space program, we get $3 in the economy, generating more than $75 billion of economic revenue every year. And it's tremendous, right? For this minuscule investment that we make as an individual, average U.S. taxpayer is spending about $20 on a month on NASA, which is, when it comes to the rest of your federal taxes, right? What else is that going towards? NASA is this very small piece of the overall story, and I think that's an investment worth continuing. And the Congress agrees. And so you have these great ideas coming out of NASA these days with Administrator Isaacman developing a sustainable roadmap that leads to a lunar base, which I will say is not a new idea. NASA Authorization Act of 2005 has put a moon base on the books as one of the stepping stone approaches to ultimately sending humans to Mars. And science underpins all of this, right? We're sending astronauts to a very harsh environment. We're squishy bags of water that don't like to be in space. If you've ever talked to an astronaut, they will tell you about the aches and pains of living in space. So it's not a place that we're evolutionarily advantaged to be in. Yet we continue to do it. Why do we do it? To expand our understanding of the cosmos, to realize, where we are in this grand universe that we find ourselves in, to do these things that no individual company or university, and in some cases, no individual government is doing. We're doing this as a coalition of governments. Artemis, right? We had Jeremy Hansen, the first Canadian to go beyond low Earth, or the Canadian that has traveled the furthest from Canada in human history. You have a coalition of people working together, and science makes it all worth it. What are we risking the lives of these astronauts for, if not to expand human knowledge and generate prosperity here on Earth?
Jack, you reminded me of one of the episodes of Star Trek Next Generation where they came in contact with a life form that was not based on carbon. And when they could finally communicate, the life form addressed us as ugly bags of mostly water.
I mean, some people, it's
I love that.
It is. And we know so little. We have an N of 1, right? A sample size of 1 when it comes to life in the universe. Right here on our home planet. And understanding habitability, the origin, distribution, and evolution of life elsewhere in the cosmos is one of those fundamental questions that drives scientific inquiry. Every 10 years, this group of scientists comes together and they write what they call the Decadal Survey for each of the big science themes that NASA operates. It's planetary science, understanding planetary worlds, heliophysics, understanding our sun. These groups of people come together every 10 years to figure out what the big questions are. And underpinning all of those, you read any of these, very easy to read 700-page documents. Habitability and the search for life underpins a lot of them. Understanding, why are we here? How did this come to be? And are we alone?
I'm talking with Jack Corrali, who is a director of government relations at the Planetary Society. He and I are going to take a break, and we will be back with more after this.
You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Hey, this is Joan Esposito, and I want to tell you about 120 Life. 120 Life is a drink made with ingredients that help support healthy blood pressure. My mom had high blood pressure for almost her entire adult life. And for many of us, it runs in the family. 120 Life is a great tasting fruit and vegetable drink designed to improve blood pressure. Put it to the test for a couple of weeks. Check your blood pressure. See if it works for you. Some people say they've seen results in as little as 2 weeks. And it is a great fruit drink. That's how I like it. To try it, go online to 120life.com. That's 120life.com. If your high blood pressure doesn't come down in 2 weeks, you can get a full refund, and you can get a 20% discount. Use the code JOAN, JOAN, for 20% off your order. These statements have not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Jack Corrali is the Director of Government Relations at the Planetary Society. They are the world's largest space advocacy organization. And, Jack, you were talking. I did not realize that NASA provided some jobs in pretty much every state in the United States. That's important to a lot of legislators. But also, I mean, we've been hearing for years about all of the scientific developments and things that came to pass that we incorporated into our lives and that started with the space program. Okay, I can think of Tang. I remember Tang, and now I'm really dating myself. For those of you who don't know what Tang is, Tang was a sort of powdered orange drink, and we were told when we were children that the astronauts drank it, so we should too. But other than Tang, Jack, what are some other things you can think of that that have made their way into daily life?
Oh gosh, the list is endless of these spin-off technologies. Look at your cell phone, right? We all have these supercomputers in our pockets that are able to take multi-megapixel images, the little chip that enables your phone to take the pictures, the selfies that you take with Bill. Those came from developing miniaturization technology to take the images that we have as the backdrop on our phone, right? The images from Mars, the images of Pluto, from the New Horizons spacecraft, and so it's in your pocket every day. It's in MRIs. It's in every hospital. Every ATM has something that was developed originally for the space program. Velcro, for crying out loud. If anyone uses Velcro at any point in time, which I'm sure liable for that, was developed as part of the Apollo program. And so these inventions, it's very easy to think, you look at the budgets for NASA, $24 billion. That's a lot of money for an individual, right? For me, if I had $24 billion, I don't know if I'd spend it entirely on the space program. But for a government, that is a huge or a very small investment for a government to make. It's the combined funding from us, U.S. taxpayers, and we get so much out of it. It's not just, we don't throw $1 billion into a space capsule and send it, hurtling out into the outer solar system. That money is spent here, and it's spent developing those next generation technologies that make life more enjoyable here on the surface, more convenient. And so, NASA has this report that they put out every year called their spin-off report. I really think they need to put some money into the communications of this, because every year they're announcing, these widgets and gadgets that are being developed for NASA applications that are making their way into daily life, and you don't always see them, right? Yeah. But there's some component of something that you're using. Just about everything in your life has been touched by the space program. And so I would love to see like a little emblem on things that says, this powered by your tax dollars at NASA, right? Just to show that this really is something in your life.
Because you've heard the arguments that I've heard. Well, why are we wasting money on something like that when there are so many causes here down on Earth that could use that kind of money and attention? What's your answer to that?
Well, I mean, if we could solve the world's problems with the $24 billion we spent on NASA, maybe that would be a good use of that money. But we can do these things. We can do both of those things, right? We can explore the cosmos and, again, make life better for everyone here through developing these technologies. It's an engine for economic and technological progress. It is solving some of those problems, right? Maybe not in like that direct money in people's pockets way, but it's providing the technology, providing the data. I mean, we all eat, right? I probably eat maybe a little too much than I should. But all of that food is grown because we are able to track and monitor, the climate and weather systems because of satellites that NASA builds and operates. And sends the data down and then pays scientists to analyze that data so we understand how our Earth functions, right, and understand how to predict inclement weather and trends and forecasts. And so it's not just like the notice that you get on your phone that, oh, it's going to rain in the next hour. It's helping farmers all across the country, across the world even, get better yield from their crop, and developing the technologies that make transport of those things easier. Development of aeronautics research is a big thing. It's the first A in NASA is aeronautics. So developing cleaner aircraft and faster and more efficient aircraft is part of their mandate as well. So it's like it's touching us in all these different ways. And so that, I think maybe that's a little long-winded, but I think that's my answer. It is an investment in a future, in a better future, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We do it for such a small fraction. I try to remind people just how little we actually spend on this. Less than half of a penny of your tax dollar goes to NASA.
You know, we were all very excited about the Artemis trip to the dark side of the moon. How does that move forward our effort to one day have a base on the moon?
Well, getting back to the moon, we unfortunately surrendered the moon back in the 70s under the Nixon administration. We made a conscious choice as a country to stop pursuing that future. There's a great report, the Apollo Commission. They wrote this whole report about the ways in which we could go forward, that the space program could go forward, and the Nixon administration threw it out and said, no, we're gonna go a completely different direction. And in there were space stations and eventual moon bases and building towards crewed missions to Mars, real like elements of science fiction right in there. And if you've seen For All Mankind, the show on Apple TV, a lot was, I think, drawn from that as inspiration. We're developing the routine, right? The ability to get back to the moon. This is the first crewed mission to the moon in more than 50 years. And Artemis 3 is going to be testing out some of the lander technology that has yet to be finalized and tested. And then Artemis 4, ideally by 2028, is going to be boots on the ground. But again, we're risking these astronauts' lives, right?
Yeah.
They have signed up to do this. We need to give them something to do, right? I mean, this has to be worth our investment. And a big part of that is science and building towards that sustained presence. There's science you can do on the lunar surface. I was talking to some lunar scientists a couple weeks ago, and they were telling me that the moon, right? It's not a uniform place. It looks all the same, right? And you see these images from the Apollo missions, and it looks like a magnificent desolation, I think, as Jack Schmitt put it, from Apollo 17. But there is so much diversity in terms of the geologic elements that are there. You have these things called permanently shadowed regions, PSRs, which at the lunar equator where the Apollo missions landed, things get baked in sunlight for about 2 weeks, and then it's in dark for 2 weeks. At the lunar South Pole and the North Pole as well, you have craters that maybe have not seen sunlight in 4 billion years. So at the bottom of those craters, you potentially have deposits of water ice, of volatiles, of fragments of the early solar system that can help us understand where the Earth how the Earth formed, what was it like, what materials were there at the formation of the Earth, where did the water come from, right, that ultimately led to the development and evolution of life. So there's questions that can be answered by having a presence there. And another thing that these scientists were telling me about was, if craters are nice because they're these nice round bowls that they look like a dish. Well, maybe on the lunar far side, you could build a radio telescope using the terrain there, and be able to. This would be a perfect radio quiet zone. You're facing exactly away from the Earth. We're tidally locked with the moon, so you're not going to get all that radio interference that satellite dishes have to contend with on the terrestrially and in low Earth orbit. And so you could build a radio antenna to peer back into the earliest days of the formation of our universe, more than 13.8 billion years ago, with very little noise. And it's one of the quietest places in the solar system. You can't really get that anywhere else. And that in and of itself is a resource to have that ability.
Jack,
and that is all things that the moon base is we're kind of building towards.
There are some I love, in case you haven't figured this out, I love space. I love space exploration. I love science. I could talk to you for the next 2 hours and never run out of questions, but we have run out of time. So promise me you'll come back.
Yes, have me on anytime. I'd be happy to talk. This is my passion too. So it's and we're making it a reality.
Jack, my partner just texted me. You must be in geek heaven. Yes, Ray, I am in geek heaven. So what? It's a good place. Jack is in geek heaven with me. We're two geeks.
It is. Join us. Join us.
Really. It's a great place. Jack, thank you so much. I look forward to your next appearance with me on the radio.
All right. Thank you so much, Joan. You have a great rest of your weekend.
You too. We are going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Find rebates and discounts on energy-efficient products at ComEd.com/home savings.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Here is a little bit of a video posted recently by Susana Mendoza. Listen to this.
Too many people feel abandoned by City Hall. Families are being squeezed by rising rents, higher fees, and property taxes. Communities don't feel safe. Small businesses are fighting to survive. We're tired of paying for big promises that are never kept. Chicago deserves more than promises. It deserves progress. I've spent my career taking on huge problems and fixing them. As a state legislator, I passed a school breakfast bill. As city clerk, I modernized city stickers, getting rid of the hours-long lines at City Hall. And as controller, I eliminated the state's backlog of billions in unpaid bills, increased transparency and accountability, earned credit upgrades for the first time in decades, and restored stability without sticking working families with the bill. I believe government should answer to the people it serves, not political insiders or special interests. Because Chicagoans are tired of paying more and getting less, tired of politics that divides people without solving problems. Chicago doesn't need bigger promises. It needs proven, competent leadership that delivers real progress people can actually feel in every neighborhood, for every family, because progress is greater than promises. I'm Susana Mendoza, and I'm running for mayor of Chicago.
Susana Mendoza joins us now to talk about her run for mayor of Chicago. Susana, how are you?
I'm doing well. Are we having technical difficulties here, Joan? Can you see me?
We don't do two-way video Zoom.
Oh, perfect.
You're
So
on Zoom. I'm on something, a broadcast line. So
perfect.
if you're seeing me, we need to call a doctor.
Nope, we are good. I feel much better that I'm like, usually really good on the tech side, but I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? Awesome.
So,
how are you?
I'm wonderful. You know, everybody, since you said you weren't going to run for re-election, the speculation has been running hot that you would jump into the mayor's race. What finally motivated you to make the announcement?
Well, you know, I went on this listening tour, and it was a thank you tour and a listening tour, but it was amazing meeting so many people across the 77 different neighborhoods over the last 9-10 months, and asking them what was on their mind, what are their concerns, and where they thought I could have the biggest impact as well. But came to the conclusion that Chicago is really, really, really starved. And I imagined it would be the choice I would make, but I wanted to really be sure that this was the right time and really the most important time to step up and lead the city, right? We are facing 3 clear crises, and these aren't just my thoughts. They're the thoughts that I've heard from and the concerns from so many constituents, and that's that we have this financial crisis, we have a crisis in public safety, and we have a crisis in confidence in terms of the direction of the city. And all those things are intertwined, but you've seen me in action. You know, I walked into an absolute dumpster fire of a crisis as state controller and have turned things around in record time for our state. And I look forward to taking my trifecta of experience as a former state legislator, a very successful one, knows how to navigate Springfield incredibly well, as a former city clerk who's had to navigate the city council and manage that and all those relationships. I did that very well and modernized my clerk's office. And then obviously navigating the state through the two worst fiscal crises in our state's history. No one is better equipped and has the results behind them than I am to get our city's fiscal house in order and stop the hemorrhaging of our taxpayer dollars. So I'm ready. And I think the constituents want me to step up, and I'm super stoked. So let's go.
You said you've been doing kind of a Zoran Mamdani talking to people, which was brilliantly done by him. What are people saying to you? Is it the kitchen table issues? In the city of Chicago, what is concerning to people? What would they want you to do or be as mayor?
Sure. Well, I'll give you an example. Deborah and Anita, they were at my launch, and I met them during my listening tour. And these were 2 out of 3 Black women who were eating lunch at Daly's in Woodlawn. And I happened to walk in just because I was hungry, right, with my staff. And Anita was the one who saw me. She recognized me. She's like, Miss Mendoza, so nice to meet you. And I went over to say hi, as you would expect me to do, because that's just who I am. And I started chatting away with them. And I said, hey, do you mind if I just join you for lunch? Is that okay? And they're like, of course. So we sat down, became friends. And it was heartbreaking to learn that 2 out of those 3 Black women had lost their children, their sons, to gun violence, right? To murder. And in our city. Imagine this. I randomly meet 3 Black women having lunch. 2 out of 3 of them lost their sons to gun violence. When I asked them, well, what's your biggest issue? They said public safety. And I said, why is that? And that's when they told me that they had both lost their sons to, they were murdered by gunshots, right? By people that, one of them was killed later in like another gang situation, the shooter, but then another one is still out on the loose. And, it's an open case that I'm trying to help, Deborah hopefully get some closure with. But, that's one of many examples. But my point is those 2 women were categorical about not feeling safe. And when I talked about their story at my announcement, they were saying it out loud. We don't feel safe. So the statistics can tell us that, people should be feeling safer because murders are down. But if you're the victim of one of those, or of maybe not necessarily murder, but you're the victim of crime, it's very real to you. And so having a mayor that understands that our city's not as safe as we'd want it to be until people really can say that they do feel safe in any neighborhood or can walk their dog in any neighborhood. It's really a quality of life thing. And so that's Deborah. And then Sam Sparks in South Shore, he had been broken in 12 times. This guy runs a beautiful coffee shop. He made it big in Hollywood. He was Steve Harvey's stylist, so he dresses really cool, but young guy, born in South Shore, grew up there, had a tough life, but made it into industry and came back to South Shore and wanted to become like an employer of youth and show these kids not just to serve coffee, but how to run a coffee shop, how to learn the business, the entrepreneurial side. And then he also runs a podcast out of there. So these kids are learning how to produce, how to, mix music and video and have a monetizable skill set. And so it's such a beautiful example of giving back and being an entrepreneur. But when we were talking on his podcast, he tells me, he just casually mentions he's been broken into 12 times. And I'm like, what? You've been broken into 12 times? And he goes, yeah. And I go, well, how could that happen? What's going on with the city? And he goes, nothing. I've called so many times. You'd think I'd at least get one person to come out here and see how they can help. And it's like a dead silence. But when I do see the city, it's because they're coming in to ding me with some new citation for some ordinance that just got passed that I didn't even know about. And when I say, well, can't I get like a warning, or I didn't even know this was a law? They're like, it's your job to be up to speed on the latest ordinances. And he's like, this is so backwards. Like, it cost him $20,000 every time to reopen because of lost inventory or stolen cash registers, broken windows. And you'd think that, I just think I've learned on this tour that we treat our small businesses as if we're doing them a favor by letting them do business in the city, instead of saying, thank you so much for choosing to do business. And how can we help you expand and grow and hire more people? You're doing us a favor. So I'm very in tune with all these issues, and I could talk all day about them, Joan, but like I understand how public safety interacts with, the need for growth and the lack of confidence, because so many other people would have given up, but Sam held on. And I'm so thankful for that the Brew is still in South Shore, because they need a great coffee shop. But those businesses need a mayor who sees them, who's going to fight for them. And I promised to do that for Illinoisans when I ran as their controller, and I delivered big time. And you're going to finally get to see a mayor who's going to say things, but actually has the skill sets to make them turn into action. My whole theme is progress is greater than promises. And I want people to see it and feel it in real time. And it's all I like to do is get stuff done. You know it.
I do know it. I'm sure you've heard the Bears saga that has erupted today, where they're like, you know what? We're going to Hammond, Indiana. And I've got to tell you, on my text line, people are like, you know what? Go to Hammond if you want, but you're not getting our tax dollars. And Chris Welch, as I'm sure you saw, put out a statement saying sort of like, we've got money that needs to be spent on people who can't afford their lives and people who need government help, not a sports team. What's your position? Brandon Johnson seems for some reason really set on trying to keep the Bears. What do you think?
Well, I think it's horrible that we're losing the Bears, and I don't think it's anything to celebrate. They're a major economic driver of people coming into Chicago. They're synonymous with our city. But here's where I think the problem is. I think the mayor is absolutely being unrealistic at this late in the hour, trying to figure out how we can salvage keeping the Bears here. But let's rewind it a little bit. He's had 4 years to craft a plan, work with the Bears, present it to the legislature. You heard the governor not that long ago say, you can't come in at the end of this session in your last year in office and say, okay, what's the plan? He didn't have a plan. And if we're being honest here, just follow the history of this deal here. None of us have the power to be in that room, right? There's one person that did, and it was Mayor Johnson. Because you can try to pin this on the governor, but at this late stage in the game, I think he was just trying to save some sort of a deal. But it was the mayor's deal to make, because he represents the city of Chicago. And that's the first leadership that had to take place. Having said that, when they were first talking, the Bears were asking for things like help with infrastructure, right? Infrastructure repairs and a deep investment from the city on that. And let me just be clear that the city and the state would have done that for any business that we were trying to lure into our city, any economic driver. That's just what you do for anyone, especially like nobody should have been opposed to doing that for the Bears. They weren't asking for the sky in the beginning, but the mayor didn't go to Springfield once, didn't call the governor once or the legislators, never, ever brought the Bears and the state legislative leaders and himself to the table to craft the plan and see what could be done. It wasn't until that last 11th hour that he's like, oh, by the way, the Bears might leave. And by then, that had given Indiana time to say, whoa, hold on. Like seeing the blizzard of incompetence hitting Chicago, we can go ahead and craft our own plan. And we're going to like roll out the red carpet and offer like the most delicious looking candy and incentives that, it's difficult to actually get mad at the Bears for saying, all right, well, all we asked for was this. And then now they're going to give us all of this. So if the Chicago wants to keep us, they're going to have to look to match or come close to that Indiana deal. And now that's significantly out of taxpayers' price range. But I think what we're seeing is the manifestation or the result of a lack of having a plan, because a no plan is no plan at all.
Yeah. Susana Mendoza, running for mayor of Chicago. I'm sure this is the first of many conversations we will have while you are campaigning. Thanks for finding a few minutes for us today.
Thanks for having me. Hey, go Bears. Just please don't go to Indiana.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
You want to buy a new house? Maybe refinance the one you've got? Call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender, now with nearly 800 five-star Google reviews. Here's one from Mary. David is fantastic. He's always ready to help, whether buying, selling, refinancing, or helping with finances. He's patient, even with complicated issues, and goes the extra mile when others would not. I can't recommend him enough. You won't regret calling David for any of your mortgage issues. I'm recommending him to my daughter and anyone who needs a mortgage. That's from Mary, who called for help consolidating her debt and was so thankful that she posted a 5-star Google review for David. If you want that same outstanding service, call Team Hochberg now, 855-563-2843, or go online, 56david.com. Team Hochberg helped me, thousands of our listeners, but you've got to make that call, 855-563-2843, or go online, 56david.com. ACM Equal Housing Lender, NMLS 643114.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
June is, of course, Pride Month. At the end of this month, there will be the Pride Parade. What exactly does Pride mean? Well, on Out Chicago on Sunday, our very own Scott Duff and Ellen Miller talked about that. Listen to this.
So here we are. We are on the eve of Pride Month.
Mm-hmm.
We are, which feels kind of weird this year for me.
Yeah, why do tell?
Well, I mean, it feels necessary to have big moments of queer joy and celebration. We need it.
Yeah.
I think we not just as a community, just we as people, we need it. We need this to celebrate joy. There's so much anger and so much vitriol just being thrown around.
And fear out there.
And fear. But there's something, I don't know, there's just something that feels, I know over the past couple of years, especially during like the first term with Ding Dong, that there is a lot of going back and remembering that Pride, others marched so that we could have a parade. Yes. You know?
Yep.
That we have made a lot of progress within a relatively small amount of time. And that we need to remember that, these rights are very tenuous. They can be at times.
As we're seeing.
You know, as we're seeing what's going on, as we're seeing with all of the anti-LGBTQ legislation that's being passed, especially on state levels, especially through the South. But we're also seeing, just as a reminder of even the rights that we do have, they may not be extended to everybody in the community. I frequently say that LGBTQ folks, we've got a very big umbrella and we got one of everybody underneath there. And somebody is getting the short end of the stick.
Like healthcare that's being, taken away from so many.
Yeah. It just feels like this year as we're heading into Pride Month, which, of course, I'm very excited about, just having, the celebrations and the performances and the fests and the joy and the pub crawling, all the and. But it feels like we need this, to have a moment to galvanize as a community, to come together and to be like, no, we're not scared. We will fight. We will march on and march forward.
That was Scott Duff and Ellen Miller talking about Pride. Here on WCPT, in addition to Out Chicago on Sundays, we air The Gailey Show. It's on Monday through Saturday from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m., a daily progressive news and talk show made for queer and the allied community. John Parker hosts The Gailey Show and is here to join us. John, welcome to the WCPT family.
Thank you so much, Joan. I'm so happy to be here and speaking with you.
And, you just heard what Scott and Ellen said. How do you feel about Pride Month and what's important to you?
I think it's really important to mention healthcare, and I just want to give a shout out to the Center on Halstead tonight. They're going to be having at 7:30 a candlelight vigil honoring people lost to HIV and other health disparities, and this is coming on the 45th anniversary of the first official report by the CDC to acknowledge the AIDS epidemic in 1981. And we've seen under the Trump administration that they have cut almost $1 billion in health research for the LGBTQ community, a lot of it in HIV funding. So what Scott and Ellen were talking about is right on. I mean, not just the healthcare, but what Pride means. I think this is an ongoing, every single year we ask ourselves, what do we want Pride to accomplish? And last year, we saw corporate sponsors race away from the LGBTQ community. I mean, they couldn't get away fast enough. Anheuser-Busch, Comcast, Nissan was the other one. They completely yanked all of their funding from San Francisco Pride. New York City, they had like $250,000 shortfall as corporate sponsors caved to Trump. I know that Pride Chicago last year, they actually held steady, which was amazing to hear that, because they did lose corporate sponsors, but then other ones showed up, and helped to fill in that gap. I know in here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, where we're based, Twin Cities Pride, they actually gave back $50,000 to Target after Target betrayed the queer community, and then, have continued on to betray basically everybody, including communities of color and immigrants here in the Twin Cities, as we saw through Operation Metro Surge and their complete lack of action. And then Phoenix Pride. I mean, I can go on and on, but Phoenix Pride this week just declared bankruptcy. Tucson Pride earlier this year shut down completely. So we are trying to figure out, I think, in the community exactly the conversation that Scott and Ellen were having, which is Pride started as a riot at Stonewall, right? I mean, literally around police brutality. And, it was great to have corporations show up because we thought that led to, integration. And now corporations are running away again. And we see the federal government erasing HIV research. Where have we been? I mean, we were running right back to that Reagan situation. So I think that a lot of folks are wanting to be in community, but also wondering, okay, what does community mean right now? What does it need to mean right now? And I think we're all kind of wrestling with that, geographically speaking. And I say that because what's happening right in Minneapolis and Chicago is wildly different than Dallas and New Orleans and Atlanta right now, right? Having to be subject to these gerrymandered red states led by MAGA sycophants to whatever Trump wants and to Project 2025. I mean, it's geographically, we need to be figuring out how do we respond. And it looks very different right now in Chicago and Minneapolis than it does in Phoenix and Dallas and Atlanta.
I'm one of the people who I used to drop money at Target every other week. And when they pulled away from carrying rainbow merchandise and they pulled away from DEI, I have not been inside the store. And I mean, I was a Target regular, and I have not been inside the store. And I know that the CEO who advised the board that they should do this, that there wouldn't be any blowback, they fired that guy, and they have a new CEO. And I thought maybe that would mean that they would re-embrace the gay community and re-embrace DEI. But that hasn't happened, has it?
Joan, you and me both. I was in Target all the time, literally like every week. Like so much of my Pride gear actually came from Target. And when they made that decision and Twin Cities Pride gave back that check, I said goodbye. And I also have not been back in that store. And we actually have been covering local organizers who have been doing boycotts and trying to get corporate accountability from Target. And they're like, it is literally like talking to a wall. They are refusing to change. And there was a huge caucus inside, a queer caucus with employees, ERG, and they're like, it's also like talking to a wall. Like they're just refusing to change. And this is a company that was found out 10 years ago that they were donating money against marriage equality. And people fought hard. My colleagues in DEI fought really hard to get them to change. And they did for a little bit. And now they've completely flipped. And, Joan, I'm right there with you. I was at Target all the time. Like half my wardrobe was Target.
You and me both.
yeah, haven't stepped foot inside.
Yeah. And I believe some people say, well, that doesn't make a difference. I believe it does. I mean, we've already seen, they had to replace their CEO for giving the board bad advice. Not that they've changed their tune just yet. But, it's one thing I can do. Maybe it's a small thing, but it's something I can do. And if everybody does it, then it's going to have power. John Parker, thank you for being here. I look forward to talking to you again in the future. Don't be a stranger. The Gailey Show, again, Monday through Saturday here on WCPT, 10 to 11 p.m. John, thanks for everything.
Thank you, Joan.
That's going to do it for me. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez is next. I will be returning to you on Monday. I will see you then. Tonight, does Patty not have a co-host? Well, she's got a ton of guests. Maybe that's why. And remember, It's the Democracy Stupid airs 1 to 4 p.m. on Saturdays with Edwin Eisendrath. I will see you on Monday. Have a great evening. Good night. Have a great weekend. Good night.